Steve Powell here with an update on the political and business situation in Mongolia. With the presidential elections fast approaching, the Mongolian government is renegotiating its contract with Rio Tinto on the Oyu Tolgoi copper and gold project in the Gobi Desert. This veiled threat of resource nationalization has happened elsewhere and has had the usual effect here: investor panic, with Rio Tinto shares losing billions of dollars of market value. Rio Tinto CEO even resigned, although we can also blame the company's write-down of its aluminum assets and the huge debt incurred from its $38 billion purchase of Alcan in 2007. Our company's project in Mongolia to lease locomotives and rail wagons to local mining companies is also on hold until the elections. I've met several times with President Elbegdorj on this and other issues, and have some insight into his thinking. After all, we went through the same graduate program many years ago in the U.S. The first commandment in politics is, get thyself reelected. Politicians in Mongolia are therefore rattling the saber of resource nationalization to appease voters. But Rio Tinto's impact on the Mongolian economy cannot be denied. Oyu Tolgoi will generate 30% of Mongolia's GDP. 30%. In my last meeting with Elbegdorj, I mentioned an economic theory we both studied at the Kennedy School known as the tragedy of the commons. This theory describes how herders in 19th century England would each pursue their own self-interests by all letting their cows graze on a commons. Overgrazing would result until that field became barren to the detriment of all. It seems to me that when one country scares investors by creating uncertainty, future investments in that country and similar countries will suffer. The president smiled when I said this, as if to say, I'm president of Mongolia, not president of the world. And so he will pursue the short-term self-interest of his country. I predict that Elbegdorj gets reelected. The government in Mongolia and Rio Tinto will reconcile, especially after the election. And Rio Tinto's share price will recover with the usual winners and losers on its roller coaster ride. But the idea that a country can renegotiate a contract only hurts the overall investment climate in that country and elsewhere. After all, uncertainty is the bane of an investor. As with the tragedy of the commons, the rational pursuit of one nation's self-interest can eventually harm that country and other countries. Natural resources are being depleted. We now search for them in more and more remote and inhospitable places. These increased exploration and development costs are, of course, passed along to end users of those resources. But investors in a project dealing with uncertainty, as in Mongolia, make capital more expensive. And this unnecessary cost is also passed along to us.